All right, folks, I'm still listening to the Murdaugh trial, and I have to say, he still doesn't seem guilty to me. If the state has any real evidence on the guy, I haven't seen it. And the defense, as the defense progresses, you would expect for him to look more and more innocent, because that is the purpose of the defense. If the prosecution did its job, by the end of the prosecution's month-long case, I should have at least, somewhat been of the opinion that this guy's guilty, and then it's supposed to be the job of the defense to try and reel me back in and lead me to believe that, hey, you know what, the prosecution, they may have made a good case, but here's some other evidence that you might not have considered, and so Alex is probably not guilty. But instead, I didn't think that he was guilty after the prosecution's case, and I just think he's less and less guilty, as the defense goes on. Today, Murdaugh himself is testifying, and they're cross-examining him right now as I speak. So I'm going to go back and watch the rest. So I haven't seen the full cross-examination, but I figured, hey, the prosecutor's going to come out swinging, right? No, not really. I listened to at least an hour, I think, of the cross-examination. And it was just all meandering and nothing hard-hitting. It was about, it wasn't about murder, certainly. Where I finally had to take a break and just record something is when the prosecutor, who, reminds me of Richard Dreyfuss, just kept on going about this badge, I guess, that Murdaugh was given because he was some sort of volunteer part-time prosecutor, which I didn't know you could be a volunteer part-time prosecutor. I guess it's like being a firefighter. Same thing out in the country. You don't have full-time firefighters. You have part-time volunteer firefighters. And apparently also out in the sticks, you got part-time volunteer prosecutors like Alex Murdaugh. And the Richard Dreyfuss prosecutor is trying to make a big deal about how I guess Murdaugh used to leave his you're issued a badge because I guess technically you're a law enforcement officer if you're a prosecutor, and so he'd leave it on his dash or somewhere in plain sight when he would get pulled over by a cop, in his own words, because he thought, hey, I'll receive favorable treatment from the police if they see some kind of badge in my car. And the prosecutor's trying to be oh my gosh, are you implying that law enforcement officers are not totally pure and objective, and that that they're going to treat someone with a badge better than they would treat the average civilian? And Murdaugh's just well, yeah, duh. And so I got to give him some credit for being honest, and this prosecutor's just being ridiculous. He's saying oh my gosh, you're abusing your power because you left a badge on your dash so that cops would be nicer to you and not blow your brains out for at a traffic stop. Remember, South Carolina is the same state, I believe, where just a couple years ago you had a cop running after a guy on foot and shooting him 3 times in the back. And this is what the prosecution's leading with in their cross-examination. Oh, and before that, they were talking about how, they were trying to say, about the stupid car data from, I remember from when the prosecution was going on, they had this, they thought this was some big bombshell. They spent, I forget how many hours or maybe even days, talking about this spreadsheet that they made up, that showed when the car was in park or when the car was not in park. And the prosecution tried to divine from that spreadsheet some kind of information about Murdaugh's whereabouts. And it was, so I think it was, I was watching, what's his name? Good Logic, spelled Lawgic, his channel, so I was getting a bit of his commentary. I guess he couldn't really figure out what they were going for either, but the best guess was that the prosecutor was trying to defend that day that they I mean, it was just, it's just incomprehensible. The prosecution's entire case is, hey, this guy is a fraud. He stole money. Therefore, he must be a murderer. Makes much more sense to me that this son, who was one of the two people killed in this double murder case, were the defendant's son and his wife. And his story is, he pulled up and found them both dead, and called 911, very upset. And they played the 911 tape, very convincing. I think that his tears were rather convincing as well, because he wasn't just crying, he was sniveling. He had to blow his nose. There was snot visibly, coming out of his nostrils. I don't know how you fake that effectively. He certainly was much more convincing on the stand than Amber Heard, who is a big-time Hollywood actress. I watched the Johnny Depp trial, and Amber Heard was very easy to spot. Her acting was terrible, but this Murdaugh guy, who's not an actor, we're just supposed to believe, oh, he's such a good actor that he can even fake, snot bubbling out of his nose, and and he's just, ugh. It makes me a little sad that people are so cynical and so detached that they can't even process any, even a little sympathy for this. I mean, the true crime wine moms and wine aunts, who are glued to this trial, the law and crime audience, they're just, I don't understand them. There's no evidence that ties this guy to these murders, and his conduct on the stand would seem to indicate that he's very much broken up about it. Now, if there was a bunch of evidence tying him to the murder, maybe then I'd be a little more skeptical of his emotions. And maybe then I would be, in the camp of people saying, oh, he's not sad that his family that he saw his family, massacred. He's just sad that he got caught. I don't know how crazy this guy would have to be, because he has no motive. So the only answer is he's crazy, because he has no motive for doing what he did. Even if you could argue, let's change the facts a little bit, because he was deeply in debt, and his wife and son had no life insurance. So it's not like he had a financial incentive to kill them. But let's say they did have life insurance. Don't you think that he would want to kill them in a less gruesome way? His son, his head exploded. Like, there was nothing left of it. Boom. And his head was in so many pieces that one of the other, witnesses who was there after the crime, and after the police left, said that the police left behind a baseball-sized chunk of this boy's head. They just left it on the ground because they had collected enough evidence. They didn't even pick up all the pieces of his brain. And so, do you think that this guy, Murdaugh, if he really was going to kill his son, do you think he'd do it quite like that? I mean, they had plenty of guns. He could have used something a little less violent than buckshot to the face. And I think, I missed part of this, but if I remember correctly, from what I was hearing in the trial, they were actually saying that this would have had to have been like a point-blank shot, like the barrel up against his head for his head to explode in the way that it did. Because it's not just like, he got, lead balls through the head. No, he had all the gases from the blast pressurize his skull and explode. So it's about as gruesome, if you were to come upon this and witness it, and you were going to look at the remains, it's about as gruesome of a way that you could kill someone with a firearm. Short of, what was his name? Peter Weller, the actor. His character in the first scene of RoboCop. Which was also done, if I remember correctly, with 12-gauge shotguns. That's the only, more gruesome, firearm death that I can think of. Now, if this guy Murdaugh or Murdaugh, I guess is what it's a very strange pronunciation. His name is spelled Alex Murdaugh, and it's pronounced Alex Murdaugh, or Murdaugh. I don't get how that works, but anyway, his son Paul, who apparently was known affectionately as Paw Paw, I heard during his older brother Buster's testimony, was apparently a very unpopular guy. Ever since he was involved in some kind of DUI boating accident, which led to the death of another teen girl. And, ever since then, this younger son, who was murdered, Paul, was not welcome in polite society. He, in fact, wasn't welcome in society at all, apparently. He was just, if he went into town, there was always somebody who had very unkind words for him. And apparently he received a lot of death threats on social media. And so if this kid was so thoroughly hated by the community in which he lived, or at least in which his parents lived, and I guess he had gone to college in Columbia, so he was kind of out of there, but at the time he was home. Remember, this happened at the family home, so this was back in the community in which he was hated. It would seem to me that one of the people who, who actually, openly wanted him dead might be a bigger suspect than this seemingly loving father. The only argument for any kind of motive is that, well, okay, this son was just such a big embarrassment that, he had to get rid of him in order to, salvage the family name or something like that. Okay, well, if that's the case, why did he kill the wife too? Is it that the wife wasn't supposed to find out, so once the wife saw that, he had murdered their son, while she was home, again, kind of strange, why would he be surprised that his wife walked in when he was just with the two of them together, only at 8:44, I think is what they've shown. He may have, you could argue he wanted to get rid of the son because he was an embarrassment. No one has testified that he had any marital troubles with his wife. Everyone seemed to describe them as a pretty happy couple. And even still, if he was going to kill them both, why would he need two different guns? Why would he blow his son's head to bits with a shotgun, then put down the shotgun, pick up what's been called, they've said it's a 300 blackout. I don't see how they would know that, unless they found 300 blackout shell casings. Maybe they did. I don't know, I might have missed that part. So maybe they do know for sure that it was a 300. But anyway, why would he kill the son with one gun and then kill the wife with another? That I don't understand that. And then you've got, the defense's expert who says that, based off the triangulation of the shooting, he had to estimate that the shooter had to be between 5'2" and 5'4", depending on how they're holding the gun. At least in the case of the person who killed the mother, the wife, and Murdaugh's 6'4". So yeah, I'm going to, and this isn't my theory. Other people have, postulated this theory. I'm going to go with the theory that these murders were probably carried out by someone who, was one of the many people who wanted this younger son dead, and then perhaps, not knowing that the mother was around, she walked in on it or discovered them, and so they had to kill her too. It doesn't really explain the two guns part, unless it was two attackers, and one of them ended up shooting the son, and then the other one went after the mother. I don't know. Can't explain it. But you don't have to explain it. The way the defense works is you just have to show that the prosecution has not proven that the defendant had anything to do with the murders. Unfortunately, that's not how our legal system actually works. The way the jurors think is that, as long as they kind of feel like you could have done it, they're going to convict you. Most of the time, jurors are not content with, the prosecution just not proving anything. You, the defense, has to prove the defendant's innocence. We do have a guilty until proven innocent de facto legal system. I don't like that, but that's the way it is. And so that's why I would say Murdaugh's certainly not guilty. I mean, I don't think it's very questionable at this point. I've seen nothing to prove that he is guilty, but he probably will get convicted because that's the way the juries work in the United States. That on top of the fact that he and his family and his son who was killed, were all very much hated anyway, and they feel like someone should go to prison from that family. And it should be known that this Murdaugh guy is going to go to prison for the fraud anyway, even if he gets off, on the murder charges. Which if I were him, I think I'd be content with that. I think he's resigned himself to the fact that he's going to go to prison for the fraud stuff, and he probably feels like he deserves it. But even still, if you didn't kill your family, you would want that to be, you would want the record to reflect that. And more importantly, I think you would want the actual perpetrators to be caught at some point. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.